The day I stumbled upon the haunted mirror was like any other unremarkable Saturday. I had a penchant for exploring garage sales, seeking hidden gems amidst the discarded relics of strangers' lives. Little did I know that this particular find would unravel a twisted tale of the supernatural that would haunt me for years to come. As I roamed from one driveway to another, browsing through mismatched dinnerware and worn-out furniture, I spotted it, an ornate gilded mirror that had seen better days. The glass was slightly smudged, and the frame chipped in places, but there was an undeniable allure to it. It stood propped against a table cluttered with bric-a-brac, beckoning to me like a forgotten treasure. I approached the mirror and examined my own reflection, half expecting to see a phantom hand reach out and pull me into its depths. But it was just a mirror, albeit a grand and antique one. The price tag, surprisingly low, made it impossible for me to resist. I haggled with the elderly woman running the sale, and soon enough, I was heading home with my newfound acquisition strapped into the backseat of my car. That evening, I propped the mirror against my bedroom wall. It looked oddly out of place in my modern apartment, but I couldn't deny the charm it exuded. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I dimmed the lights and turned to the mirror to assess my appearance. My reflection stared back at me, calm and ordinary, nothing out of the ordinary. However, that night, I awoke to a sound, a faint, haunting whisper that seemed to originate from the mirror. I sat up, disoriented, convinced it was just a dream. But then, as if in response to my skepticism, the whisper grew louder, more distinct. It was a voice, cold and mournful, uttering words that sent shivers down my spine. "You should not have taken me," it hissed. I stumbled out of bed, my heart racing, and switched on the lights. The room was empty, save for me and the mirror. I examined it closely, my reflection now distorted, twisted into a grotesque, nightmarish figure. Panic clawed at my chest as I backed away from the mirror, unable to tear my eyes from the grotesque visage that leered at me. My rational mind tried to reason that it was a trick of the light, or perhaps a result of my troubled sleep, but my instincts screamed otherwise. I couldn't bring myself to look into the mirror any longer, so I covered it with a bedsheet and huddled in the corner of my room, trembling with fear. Morning came, and with it, a sliver of courage. I approached the mirror, half expecting the horror from the night before to have dissipated. To my relief, my reflection had returned to normal, as if the mirror had never harbored a malevolent presence. Days turned into weeks, and the mirror remained dormant. I convinced myself that I had merely experienced a vivid nightmare, a trick my tired mind had played on me. Still, I couldn't shake the unease that gnawed at me every time I passed by the mirror. My friends and family, oblivious to my ordeal, admired its beauty, but they couldn't see the sinister undercurrent lurking beneath its glassy surface. Then, one evening, as I brushed my teeth before bedtime, I glanced at the mirror. The reflection it presented was not my own. Instead, I saw a shadowy figure lurking behind me, its eyes gleaming with malevolence. I spun around, but there was nothing there, just an empty room. The mirror had begun to torment me with its twisted reflections. My reflection would contort into monstrous shapes, and I could see grotesque, otherworldly creatures lurking just beyond the glass. I began to avoid the mirror, draping it with sheets and blankets, but it seemed to thrive on my fear, growing more insidious with each passing day. Sleepless nights became the norm. I'd wake up to the sound of anguished whispers, the voices growing louder, more demanding, and more menacing. They spoke of unspeakable horrors, of ancient curses, and of a malevolent presence trapped within the mirror, seeking release. I reached out to paranormal experts and psychics, desperate for a solution. They performed rituals, sprinkled salt, and recited incantations, but nothing could break the mirror's grip on my life. It had become a gateway to a sinister realm, a prison for malevolent souls, and it reveled in its newfound power. As weeks turned into months, I felt myself slipping into madness. The mirror seemed to feed on my fear, my despair. It twisted my perception of reality, making me doubt my own sanity. I became a recluse, unable to leave my apartment, haunted by the relentless whispers and the grotesque visions it projected. I knew I had to break free from the mirror's clutches, but every attempt to rid myself of it failed. It had become an inescapable part of my life, a relentless tormentor that refused to be banished. Then one fateful night, as I lay in my bed, broken and defeated, the whispers grew louder than ever before. The room filled with a chill-in. It was a chilly autumn evening, when the idea of playing with a Ouija board first surfaced among my group of friends. We had gathered at my old, creaky farmhouse, looking for a thrill to break the monotony of our college lives. Little did we know that our curiosity would lead us down a nightmarish path into the world of the supernatural. I had always been intrigued by the paranormal, but my fascination had never ventured beyond horror movies and ghost stories. That night, however, something compelled us to take it a step further. With the Ouija board sitting innocently on the coffee table, we surrounded it, eager but apprehensive. The room was dimly lit, the shadows dancing in the corners, creating an atmosphere that was both eerie and exciting. We placed our trembling hands on the planchette, our fingertips barely touching it. I took a deep breath and spoke the question that would change our lives forever. "Is there anyone here with us?" For a few agonizing moments, nothing happened. We exchanged nervous glances, ready to laugh off the whole idea. But then, as if guided by an invisible force, the planchette began to move. It glided smoothly across the board, spelling out words with deliberate intent. YES. A collective gasp escaped our lips as the reality of the situation sank in. It was one thing to joke about ghosts and spirits. It was quite another to have what appeared to be a direct line of communication with one. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. The planchette spelled out a name, E-L-L-I-O-T. Elliot. None of us recognized the name, but it was the beginning of a connection we couldn't sever. We continued our session, asking questions that grew increasingly specific. It seemed that Elliot had once lived in this farmhouse and had met a tragic end. He claimed to be a benevolent spirit, and we felt a strange sense of camaraderie with him as he answered our questions about the afterlife and the secrets of the universe. Hours passed, like minutes, and our fear transformed into fascination. We became engrossed in our conversation with Elliot, and the idea of saying goodbye didn't even cross our minds. That's when the atmosphere in the room shifted. A sudden chill filled the air, and the planchette began to move faster, more aggressively. It spelled out a chilling message, L-E-A-V-E-N-O-W. The once friendly entity had turned malevolent. Panic washed over us, and we quickly moved our hands off the planchette. The room seemed to close in around us as we stared at the board, trembling and uncertain. "Is this some kind of joke?" my friend Sarah asked, her voice quivering. Before we could respond, the lights flickered and went out. Darkness enveloped us, broken only by the faint glow of the moonlight filtering through the windows. We fumbled for our phones, using their feeble light to navigate the room. That's when we heard it, the eerie sound of whispering voices that seemed to come from all around us. Terrified, we tried to find the source of the voices but found nothing. It was as if the very walls of the farmhouse were speaking to us. Panic took hold of our group, and we made a desperate dash for the door, leaving the Ouija board behind. As we spilled out into the cold night, relief washed over us. The whispers had ceased, and the malevolent presence that had overtaken our gathering had been left behind in the farmhouse. We vowed never to touch a Ouija board again, shaken by the ordeal we had just experienced. But the nightmare was far from over. Over the following days, strange and inexplicable events began to plague us. Objects moved on their own, eerie shadows flickered in the corners of our vision, and we each began to experience vivid, haunting nightmares. It seemed that our encounter with Elliot had left us marked in some way, and he was determined to make his presence known. One night, as I lay in bed, I felt an icy breath against my neck and heard a whisper that chilled me to my core. "You should have listened," it hissed. I turned on the lights, but there was no one there. It was as if Elliot's vengeful spirit had followed me home. Desperate for answers, we sought out the help of a paranormal investigator. As he examined our farmhouse, he uncovered a hidden compartment in the floorboards containing a journal. It belonged to a previous owner of the house who had conducted experiments with the occult. The journal detailed his attempts to summon a spirit named Elliot, who had ultimately turned on him, driving him to madness. The investigator believed that the Ouija board had rekindled Elliot's presence, and our continued communication had only made him stronger and more vengeful. He performed a ritual to banish the malevolent spirit, and slowly, the paranormal activity in our lives subsided. But the scars of that fateful night remain with us, a constant reminder of the dangers of tampering with the supernatural. We learned the hard way that some doors are better left. It all began with a dusty cardboard box tucked away in the dimly lit recesses of my attic. I was never one to shy away from a good mystery, and the thrill of discovering forgotten relics of the past often led me on unexpected journeys. Little did I know that this particular discovery would take me on a terrifying odyssey into the heart of darkness. One rainy Saturday afternoon, as I rummaged through the attic in search of old family photos, my fingers brushed against something cold and smooth. I pulled out the box, its contents obscured by time and neglect. The box itself was unremarkable, save for the layer of dust that clung to it like a shroud. Curiosity piqued. I opened the box and found myself staring at a collection of VHS tapes. Their labels were faded, their plastic cases cracked and yellowed. Among the stack, one tape caught my eye. It bore no label, no markings of any kind. It was as if it had been deliberately erased from memory. Without a second thought, I brought the mysterious tape downstairs and dusted off my old VCR. The anticipation of uncovering a hidden gem, perhaps an old family video, fueled my excitement as I pushed the cassette into the player and hit play. The screen flickered to life, and I found myself staring at a grainy, distorted image. It was a recording of a dimly lit room, shrouded in shadows. I strained my eyes to make out the details, but the poor quality of the recording made it nearly impossible. As the minutes passed, the room remained empty, but an eerie sense of foreboding settled over me. I felt as though I were being watched, that there was something in the room with me, something unseen and malevolent. Suddenly, the recording shifted. The camera was now pointed at a mirror that hung on the wall, and within its reflection, I saw a shadowy figure, hunched and distorted. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched in horror, unable to tear my eyes away. The figure began to move, its movements jerky and unnatural. It turned its head, and its hollow eyes seemed to pierce through the screen, locking onto mine. I could feel its malevolence, its hunger, and its desire to escape the confines of the tape. With a jolt, I ejected the VHS, and the room plunged into darkness as the power in my house went out. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for a flashlight, my hands trembling. When the light pierced the darkness, I was alone, but the lingering terror of the cursed videotape remained. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had unleashed something malevolent, something that had been trapped in that tape for a reason. As the days passed, strange and inexplicable events began to plague my life. Objects moved on their own, and I heard whispers in the dead of night, voices that seemed to come from nowhere and yet everywhere at once. I knew I had to unravel the dark history of the cursed videotape to understand what I had unwittingly unleashed. My research led me to a local legend, a story of a filmmaker who had delved into the occult, using forbidden rituals to capture the essence of a malevolent spirit on tape. The legend spoke of a cursed videotape, a recording of unspeakable horrors, and a curse that could only be broken by returning the tape to its place of origin, the filmmaker's old abandoned studio on the outskirts of town. With trepidation, I embarked on a journey to the decaying studio. The place was a forsaken monument to madness, its walls covered in cryptic symbols and the air thick with the scent of decay. I found a room filled with old film reels and dusty VHS tapes, the cursed videotape among them. As I picked up the tape, a sinister presence seemed to envelop me, and I knew that I had to complete the ritual to break the curse. I needed to confront the malevolent spirit trapped within the tape and return it to its prison. With the cursed videotape in hand, I returned to the room where the filmmaker had conducted his forbidden rituals. I played the tape once more, and the room seemed to come alive with shadows and whispers. The figure in the mirror materialized once again, its eyes burning with hatred. As I watched, the figure began to scream, a deafening, soul-piercing wail that echoed through the room. I could feel its fury, its desperation to escape. But I was determined to end the curse. With all the strength I could muster, I recited an incantation I had discovered in my research, a chant that bound the malevolent spirit to the tape once more. The room shook with a violent energy, and the figure in the mirror convulsed in agony. And then, with a final bone-chilling scream, the figure was sucked back into the mirror, disappearing into the cursed videotape. The room fell silent, and the shadows retreated, leaving me shaken but victorious. The curse had been broken, the malevolent spirit imprisoned once more. I sealed the cursed videotape in a box and buried it deep within the earth, a grave from which it would never escape. As I left the abandoned